began our process to go tiny in February 2015 during what is now fondly remembered as the purge. 18 kiddos have been in our home long-term, 13 are permanent, and when we began our downsizing plan, we had 12 out of 13 living at home. So that's pretty epic and probably pretty ballsy. Our minimalism journey was born from stress. Many people embrace minimalism for financial reasons or to leave a smaller footprint, which are fantastic ideals. But ours was solely due to reducing overwhelm. I dreaded going home the entire way home from work, knowing the house would look like a tornado and that I'd spend my evening, every evening, coming home to attempt to put it back together. Two things happened very close together. Dane told me one day that he didn't feel like he could help me clean the house anymore because it was so overrun. And a friend came to visit, but when she walked in, instead of relaxing, she said, "Wow, you have a lot of stuff." Those two things made it impossible to ignore my stress. We downsized about 70% of what we owned, while at the same time beginning what was also known in our home as the mass exodus. 12 of those 13 kids were born in 10 years, so while there were pregnancies, 3 kids in diapers, and 2 kids breastfeeding at a time for years on the back end, we knew they'd all be leaving close together. We gave them the option of taking their bedroom furniture with them, or we donated it. And we also continued to downsize the rest of the house as our family grew smaller. As I looked into permanently downsizing our home, not just reorganizing it, and I began purging rooms one at a time, my online searches revealed minimalism and a new world opened up to me. As our belongings lessened over the 3-month purge, minimalism became freedom and a new path was set. It was a path I had been on a few times in my life. Times when I recalled being at my happiest, but keeping up with the Joneses and the lure of consumerism, along with having a huge family, were battles that I had been losing. With renewed purpose and a new beloved feeling of lightness, pushing on felt amazing. We started with 2,200 square feet to 1,750 to 1,440
to 1,000 square feet.
We had an ongoing process to consider what we used regularly as our family grew up and out. And going down to 350 square feet wasn't an issue for me. It was being able to do all the things we normally did on a smaller scale. Our lives have been changed for the better, but minimalism is not deprivation. We all have to navigate that journey in our own way. I knew we hadn't found our sweet spot yet, but had a bit of hesitation that we would go too far in the opposite direction. The answer to this was to pour over Instagram, Pinterest, and YouTube and follow families that were already living this way. What did they use the most? What were their biggest challenges? How do you function normally in a much smaller space? Dane and I knew the soonest we could consider going tiny was the summer of 2018, after the 3 girls that graduated high school had moved out, and we'd be down to 2 girls at home. 2 kids from 12 just 4 short years ago was the first time we really felt like our biggest downsize was possible. We also knew it would probably be the summer of 2020 when we were down to only 1 at home. We were ready to go tiny in a big way. Dane and I have had different ideas on what our big downsize would look like. While he wanted a 600 square foot, 10.5 wide tiny house on property we owned and a Sprinter van for traveling, I wanted to buy a school bus and create a home we could park or travel. With zoning laws, a tiny house wasn't as easily a viable option. And considering the price of property, the cost was also prohibitive. Similarly, as we weren't planning on a DIY schoolie, that seemed like it would also end up taking more money than we were able to spend. We had also discussed RVs, and where I wanted the engine included, Dane preferred a trailer option. Dane and I had stayed a few days in a tiny house in Auburn, California to get a feel for the space, and we realized we didn't entirely mind the 8-foot wide space, although it wasn't ideal, but we definitely didn't want to sleep in a loft. Our choices continued to be whittled down, but the dream to go from a sticks and bricks traditional home to something out of the box was on the not-so-distant horizon. In the end, the RV had some very appealing aspects. First was the availability. There are a lot to choose from. Second was the cost, much less than a schoolie or tiny house. And third, financing seemed to be easier. The other benefit is that slide outs are often very common. So we weren't locked into an 8-foot wide home. We looked at RVs, narrowed down the floor plans we preferred, decided not to get anything new. Our journey might not have begun with finance or a smaller footprint, but as the time drew closer, both of those became more of a draw. Knowing we could move or travel if we decided to, that we had a level of freedom in our new tiny home RV, felt like life was filled with amazing opportunities. When we crunched the numbers and had a better idea of how much we would be saving, it was astounding. This made the drive to go tiny even stronger. And then we did it. We bought the RV.